We are all clear. Here we go.
When Barbara switched to TurboTax,
I wrote four generations.
All right, teammates. We're here. As one Crookshank here, your one and only Move Swiftly speaker, former college athlete, and current five-time published author. I'm here once again, as we do normally. We do these monthly, bi-weekly, depending on who I can get on as a guest. But we pretty much come on here and just chop it up about the collegiate experience. I love to have current college athletes come on, especially people that are really knee deep in the game and understand how chaotic the world has been, chaotic the college athletic world has been now. And today's no different. We have this month's athlete of the month, Micheal Sabella, right? I did get that right? Sabella, sorry. Micheal Sabella, from my alma mater. Shout out to, I want to say Long Island, but I kind of want to bring it up to Strong Island, because every time I see him play, and every time I say the Stony Brook words, it takes me back to Kenneth P. Laval Stadium and things like that. So we're gonna kind of chop it up about his career and just talk a little bit about where he's come from. There's so many pieces of his story that are very important for not only current athletes that are coming up and looking to play Division 1, whatever sport you want to play, but the parents as well. The parents really need to get a hold of his story and his message and everything that Mike has put on paper, the article, the feature that I wrote about him. There's so many pieces of his story and so many layers of it that it's very important for anybody that's interested in playing in college athletics there. So with all that, Mike, welcome to the show. Great to have you. How you doing?
I'm happy to be here. I'm doing good.
All right, so there's quite a few things that I do want to make sure I talk to you about. First things first, we gotta talk about how decorated you actually are as a lacrosse player. All right, so you started every single game for Stony Brook lacrosse. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Stony Brook lacrosse, that's a pretty big deal. That's a hard thing to do because lacrosse is a very big sport out there. I grew up in Maryland, so I know I'm living in South Florida now, but I know how big lacrosse is. Two-time team captain, two-time conference All-American, and two-time it was all champion, right?
Yeah.
The Champions Tournament, and then also most importantly, an academic All-American. All right. However, what's really interesting about your story is you started off as a football guy. And one of the things that I have been fighting for, I used to work for a company at FBU where I ran across a lot of parents who keep their sons in one sport. They try to specialize them earlier and earlier on, and they don't realize how much of a detriment that actually can be on the back end when they're not expanding their athletic, and seeing everything they can do. So can you just speak to, a little bit about your time as a football player and how you were able to make that transition from being a football guy to, obviously accomplishing all the things that you've done in the lacrosse field?
Yeah, I mean, I started playing football when I was a little kid. My dad was a big football guy as well. So that was the first thing I got into right off the bat. First sport I ever played, first anything I ever did, really.
And this is in Long Island, correct?
Yeah, back on Long Island.
Right.
So I grew up playing football, and obviously Long Island's such a big lacrosse area. So eventually lacrosse got introduced to my dad a little bit, and the other parents were telling my dad about how much all the other kids enjoy playing. So he just kind of introduced it to me last second, and I just ran with it, I guess. But growing up, even through high school, through middle school, I was a multi-sport athlete. I played football, I wrestled, and I played lacrosse, all three.
Right.
And I think, honestly, when you look at my lacrosse game, if you look at the way that I play, you could see the impact that football and wrestling had on the way I play and how it's molded me kind of as an athlete, not even just a lacrosse player, but as an athlete. So I'm a huge advocate for playing multiple sports. I think it gives you a different perspective on just mentality. Like it's the only way to say it. It's mentality, just like how you play, how you go about your business. And
right.
That's been molded.
You actually beat me to it because again, I did some wrestling. I played linebacker, did some wrestling. What kinds of things did you like? If we're talking in-game things, what kinds of things are similar about the three sports?
I mean, the physicality is everything. Right. All three sports, like being physical is everything, especially for a defensive player, which I am. Right. Physicality is everything. So that's something I took from football, and obviously wrestling is as physical as it gets, as hard as it gets.
Right.
So those three things, obviously working on it from one sport to the other sport to the other sport, it kind of all add into each other for me.
Okay, I got you. Now, when you're saying physicality, you're meaning that And this is the point. The reason I'm pausing here because I want to make sure listeners get the point. When he says physicality, you can look really good in 7-on-7. All right, you can look really good in a t-shirt. You can look jacked and things like that. But when you get on that field and the pads go on, and it's time to actually show that you got some balls and show that you actually can stick up for yourself, the physicality of making sure you're doing more than one sport, all of that stuff is very important for you to have. And it's a hard thing, guys. It's a hard thing, and you got to make sure you're training your mind to constantly be an imposer. I remember actually when I was there, they moved me to fullback my second year when I was there, and I had a coach who said, "Are you going to be the hammer or are you going to be the nail?" All right, and it's important that you guys understand that the game is a physical game, whether it is lacrosse, whether it is football, whether it is wrestling. It's important that again, you got to be physical, you got to be aggressive, you got to be that guy that constantly is imposing your will. So when you think about how you play the game, how are you able to transition that into? I mean, because I'll be honest with you, man, the whole academic All-American thing. I wasn't that. How are you able to be so committed, so committed to your sport, obviously very decorated, but still get it done in the classroom as well? Because another issue that, especially being out here in South Florida, another issue that I see and I hear a lot of when I deal with athletes is, again, you got the talent, got the ability, but you don't have it done. You're not getting it done in the classroom. So speak to a little bit about how you're able to balance that and, make sure you're getting it done in the classroom, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, and I would be lying if I said it wasn't hard, right? And like you said, a ton of people struggle with it, like especially athletes. I think time management's really everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially getting your stuff done earlier than later. Once you like let it wait, procrastinate, let it later, that's when things get impossible, right? Especially as an athlete, you go and you lift and you have film and you go to practice, and then
Mm-hmm.
sit on the couch for a little bit, and you're sitting in that kind of tired environment where your body's shutting down a little bit. If you leave things for after that, you're just not going to want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to like manage yourself in a way where you're not getting exhausted before you already did everything that you have to do in a day. I think that's the most important part about it.
Now it's easier. It's obviously like you alluded to. It's easier said than done. However, you were fortunate to be in a situation where I believe in the article you have a mother that worked. Man, and first of all, we got to shout out moms. Moms, if you're listening, we got to shout you out, moms, because a lot like my mother, very hardworking lady, very much about being there for their sons and showing their sons the right way and not just talking it, actually being the example. Because you had a mother that I believe you said worked in, was it an X-ray or something like that? Like she worked her way up in the hospital world, right? And that's what got you to actually pick Stony Brook. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because you going into Stony Brook, you knew, being in that environment where there's a hospital right there, knowing what you wanted to study while you were playing. I'm sure a lot of that helped when it came to like those days that you're talking about. Like, man, I don't feel like doing it, but I know what I want to do after lacrosse. So can you speak to that a little bit? Because a lot of guys go into college, it's like, okay, look, you're paying me, I'm getting a full ride. I don't really care about what I'm studying. I'm just gonna go with whatever. And then those days, like you talked about, where it's like, yo, can I do my work or can I go get some sleep? They're choosing to sleep because, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing here academically. I don't really know what it is I'm doing. So, speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a big part of it too. I mean, I'm lucky, like you said, my mom's awesome, and she worked her balls off to get to where she is.
There you go. Mom got balls, baby.
She started as an ultrasound tech.
That was it. Ultrasound tech, right.
She didn't even know she was going to be able to get into school. She came from two parents who didn't go to college.
Wow.
And she just kind of took a shot. She made it in. She made it into a really selective program. She got her way through.
Uh-huh.
And I grew up with her working at Stony Brook. And then my older sister also
Really?
Stony Brook. My older sister was on the women's team. So those two things were huge in me picking to come here, especially knowing what I wanted to do before I got into college, knowing I wanted to go med was huge.
Huh.
And having a goal and like knowing what the goal is definitely, I guess, lights a fire under you when it comes to like knowing what you need to do and knowing what you need to get done. It's hard to get up every morning and like just think to later on in the day after practice and knowing that I have to get work done if I didn't know what the work was for. Like if I didn't have a goal, if I wasn't reaching for something.
Exactly.
But I'm lucky I was put up in a position where I already had that instilled in me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, like you said earlier, all props to moms.
Yeah, and I didn't even know that. So I just gotta make this point. gonna get back to the conversation. But one of the things I do want to make sure you guys as parents understand, because actually my sister, she went to Maryland, and I went to Stony Brook and Carson, and I went to two different schools. But it's important that you as parents, when you do what his mom did and you actually work at the school, the doors you're opening for your kids is just the same doors as some donor that's coming in and paying about $1 million. You're just as important to the university. That's one of the things that we had, especially with this world of NIL, the transfer portal, where you want to get a foot in the door. If you're an employer at the university, you're making the same strides, you're doing the same things that some rich donor does, because you're creating possibilities and you're creating opportunities. And that's what the collegiate environment can create. It's a world of opportunities. So it's very important that we take what he did, because again, this is actually brand new to me. I didn't even realize that she worked at the school and you have a sister there. But that family element, and that actually leads me into my next talking point. That family element is incredibly important when it comes to nowadays, because we have something called the transfer portal. I didn't have to deal with the transfer portal. We have something called name, image, and likeness, where there's money involved, and there's a lot of pressure when it comes to college athletes to now being treated basically like free agents, and you go wherever. You're not committed here, you're not committed there. Can you speak to, now were you a freshman when NIL was first passed?
I was a junior, I believe.
A junior in college or high school?
In college.
You're a junior in college. So how do you, now you were probably more on the back end, but how do you think things would have changed for you had you known, or what kinds of things do you see that are different now that name, image, and likeness exists, and that the transfer portal exists? Because again, I can give you a little bit of my experience, and this was before the transfer portal exists. There were guys leaving before like the semester ended. Like, there were guys leaving and thinking that the grass was going to always be green. In fact, I wrote about this in my book. There was a running back who left, and he was projected to be the starter, and you would see him come back after like practices just saying that was the worst decision that he could have ever made, and it's just not in the right area. So speak to it a little bit about how it is now, that it's kind of like a free-for-all, and I'm sure you deal with it too, where it's like guys are talking about leaving and not liking it. Okay, coach yelled at me, I'm sensitive, so now I'm gonna go leave and go try somewhere else. Speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of become the norm at this point. To deal with the transfer portal and all that other talk about it, especially with like the whole COVID deal, with everybody getting fifth years. You graduate at the end of your fourth, there's nothing keeping you at a school, and a lot of people just go. And like you said, it's a free for all. But I don't know. I think I've always been sort of old school with that kind of thing. I never really considered the transfer portal like that. And obviously, I came in, and it was more than just lacrosse for me when it comes to Stony Brook. So I guess that made it a little easier for me.
Yes.
But like, it's all the time. It's everywhere. And NIL is a huge part of it as well. Like, you want to go and you want to get your piece. And I get that too. Like, you only get so long as an athlete. Your body will only last for so long. So you got to take advantage of it while you can.
Now, how do you sort of mentor the young guys though? Because I'm sure you're one of the guys that they bring in and they have recruits talk to, and you get younger guys who, again, this college stuff is a lot, all right. And I'm not here telling you, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you, but it's a ball buster. To tell you the same things my coach told me, it's a ball buster. It's not easy. It's not for everyone. Everyone's not going to be a Division I player. Everyone's not going to be a Division III player. Everyone's not going to make varsity of their high school team. So to get to a varsity level and play D1 and do all these things, when you see young guys hitting the wall, what kinds of things do you advise them? How do you help them get through it?
I think it's important to realize that no matter where you are, if you put the work in and you're good, you will be found, regardless of whether it's as a little kid growing up looking to play middle school ball, or whether it's a senior in high school looking to go into college, or whether it's a college kid in a mid-major. Like, if you are good, you will be found. And I think it's important to keep that in mind no matter what you do, honestly, because like a lot of people like to think that if they're, I don't know, under the radar, if they're just starting or wherever you may be in that process, that you're going to be able to get out. But that's not the case. If you do your thing and you work hard, you will get out.
Now, how was it though? Because again, and I've spoken to lacrosse. Actually, I had the head female coach for Providence. She's at Providence now, Eileen Ferry. I had her on my show like way back when I first started the show, and one of the things we talked about was lacrosse doesn't have a pro sport like the NFL or the NBA where there's millions and millions of dollars and you have to deal with that. How was that? How was that? The fact that there really isn't a pro league. Do you see much of a difference in terms of the mentality of your lacrosse guys and the mentality of your football guys?
Yeah, it's very different. I mean, I think that school is all the more important as a lacrosse player
Yeah.
because no matter how good you are, you're going to get to that next level and it might not be enough.
Hmm.
Like as an NFL guy, you go in, you're set for life, right?
Yeah.
But as a lacrosse guy or a lacrosse girl, that
Hmm.
might not be enough for you. So I think school is even more important for, I guess, a lacrosse player because you have to have something to fall back on if it doesn't work out.
Right. And you kind of accept that at a younger age because again you're one of the more decorated guys that I think anyone could imagine, and I don't hear you even mention playing pro. I hear you talk about specifically what you're going to be doing, and you graduate when is it this semester?
Yeah, this semester. I mean,
Right. So
like, at the same time, I
right.
would
Yeah.
love to play pro,
Hmm?
but I would love to play pro, and
Yeah,
that's
that's what I was going to ask you.
another thing. Like
How would you how
lacrosse
would
player.
you go about that? Like that's what I was going to ask you. Like how would you go about that if going pro was some like an option? What kind of steps would you take?
So I know for me specifically, like playing pro lacrosse is it's more of a summer thing, so
Okay.
it wouldn't really interfere with school all that much for me. So
I got you.
for me, that's doable, right?
Okay.
But at the same time, like I said earlier, like if you go pro, it's because you love to play.
Right.
Like I don't think you go pro with the mindset of saying like, okay, that's gonna be my life. That's where I'm gonna make my money. I'm gonna be set.
Hmm.
That's not the mindset. The mindset is you go because you love to play, because
Got
you do it at the highest level. So that's how it's been for me too. If I go pro, it's because I love to play and I don't want to quit, and because I think I can do it at the highest level. And it's not because I want to make that my career. It's gonna be a little bit of both. Like I do want to play, but I also still have a plan.
it. Hmm.
So I think that's important too, honestly.
Well, I mean, all right. So allow me to school me a little bit on this because I'm in the football world and I don't know how many people actually know what pro leagues there are for lacrosse or what options there might be. So educate myself and some of our listeners as well about what leagues they are, what's available to them, and maybe that might actually help them in terms of help the sport when it comes to just bringing in more people. So the floor is yours.
There's two really big leagues. It's the
Mhm.
PLL, which is Field Lacrosse, Professional Lacrosse League, or Premier Lacrosse League. Sorry,
Mhm.
Premier Lacrosse League. And there's the MLL, which is a box lacrosse league, it's very similar, but it's very different. Box is more like hockey,
Mhm.
and then field is obviously like a lot bigger, more spread out. But it's two different games. They're two different times of year. I think box is more Canadian. More Canadians play box, and then more like players from the States play field.
Mhm.
But like as a field guy, that's what I've grown up playing. I've never really played box. Like it would be like PLL, which was I would look to go into if I did want to play pro.
Okay,
But
so PLL,
PLL
MLL,
is more like the college game.
more like the college game. Okay. Well, hey, PLL, y'all just got a shout out, man. Again, because I'm sure a lot of people don't know that the pro leagues exist, and I can imagine that can deter a lot of kids who step out and they start when they start taking the game seriously, when they make the decision in high school what they want to play and all that kind of stuff. So with all that, man, I want to be very respectful of your time, and I definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your knowledge and your insight. But I want to talk a little bit about what you plan on doing after, because we sort of started alluding to it earlier. But speak to the listeners, anybody that may be interested in hiring you, or anybody that you would think of would be a good employer. What are you going to bring to the table? What is Mike, a former lacrosse player, guy that's as decorated as can be, got his academic, All-American, all that? What exactly do you want to do, and who do you kind of see yourself working with from a career standpoint outside of after lacrosse?
Yeah. So I mean, like I talked about earlier, I came into
Mhm.
college knowing it was med. For me, it's kind of taken a little bit of a turn.
Pre-med, right?
Actually, it's changed a little bit for me. Like I
Mhm.
just knew it was somewhere in the med field. Now I'm like starting to really focus on nursing specifically.
Okay.
So that's the goal for me right now. Just going into nursing school, becoming an RN. And
Okay.
then if something opens itself up further down the line when it comes to specialty or whatever it may be, then it does. But right now, that's my only focus, becoming an RN.
just becoming an RN, and it wouldn't matter Long Island where. Well, I'm sure you would enjoy staying in Long Island probably.
It'd be easy.
Yeah, it would be easy, man. As cold as it was, I'm out here in Florida now, so I don't miss Long Island too much. I definitely want to come across the campus and see how everyone's doing. It's
Yeah, weather hasn't been
changed
great
with the indoor facility now, so I got to get my listen. I had a couple rough nights, a lot of rough nights there, so I got to get myself mentally right to be back on that campus. So, again, like I said, appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you want to leave our listeners with? I know you busy guy, man, and well, yeah, how's the season going and all that? You free to plug away. Anyone that maybe want to talk to you or have questions for you, reach out to you. It's your time to kind of put all that stuff out there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we're finishing up our season now. We've got 2 more weeks left of the regular season, and we're in playoff mode. Every game matters so much, so we're going in with that kind of mentality that every game, like, you got to go in and win. So this is where it's kicking up. This is where it gets fun. So I hope you guys tune in and watch.
All right, and if anybody wants to follow you or get in touch with you, what's the best way to do
that? My school email is there anywhere where I could leave that? Like,
yeah, I could put it in the show notes.
Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna type.
Well, I have it. Yeah, Micheal@sbu.com. Yeah.
That's the easiest way to reach me. I'm checking that every day because I got to stay on top of my classes.
All right, I got you. All right. Well, again, like I said, appreciate you coming on. Everyone out there, again, this has been an incredible episode of the Move Swiftly podcast, an incredible athlete of the month. I do them every single month. There's a different athlete coming on, sharing their insight. And again, I say it all the time, everybody wants to go D1 until they see what D1 athletes actually do. So the opportunity is here for you to ask your questions, talk to them a little bit. They make themselves available. Everyone out there, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.